Profile is made possible by grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Texas Committee for the Humanities.
It always is crazy for survivors to talk about surviving. There's something almost callous about it. I don't think success ever gave me as much pleasure as it gave most people. I'm not 100%
And I'm very sad
sure
about
I
that.
understand Hammett to this
Very
day.
sad.
He was a very complicated
I did finally
man.
take the Fifth Amendment. I tried not to take the Fifth Amendment.
The House Un-American
What I
Committee
said
had
was,
called me
I
and
will
I
talk
saw the
about
handwriting
myself.
on the wall. There was no.
My mother and I, I'm
There's no
sorry to
way
say,
out. I knew my
didn't get along.
Annoyed me.
I had stopped writing.
And by the time I
Decided I was
realized
not going to
why,
be any good.
and I wasn't
was
going to be
dead.
bad. I've long ago stopped thinking about what happiness is. Taken for granted that there was no arbitrary definition of it.
You said that during the McCarthy years, you learned what you could do without. What were those things you could do without? Obviously, you had to give up the farm, which was a tragedy in your life. Money. You could live without money.
I did live without money.
You even went to work in Macy's, didn't you?
Yes.
That must have been an extraordinary time for you. How did you feel about going to work in Macy's?
I didn't mind it. I was very pleased. I didn't do it under my own name.
I understand that.
I was very pleased. I only did a half day. I was pleased to have any kind of job. I didn't like the whole period, mind you. I hated coming down from having earned a lot of money to earning almost nothing, but I also found that one could manage if one had to manage. And well, you know, it's silly for me to sit here and say this now because it always is crazy for survivors to talk about surviving. There's something almost callous about it. The people who didn't survive don't feel this way about it.
You have strong feelings about not talking about things that were done right, about surviving, or when Hammett gave money, he never talked about it. You said a lot of people would give money, but other people would talk about it.
Yes, yes, I do have. I do have, because there seems to me something, well, in this particular case, it's fine for me now to smile at that period. I survived and came out very well. There's something callous about looking back upon it with amusement and pride, because many other people didn't. I was...
You're a survivor.
Maybe chance did a great deal of it.
You said Hammett was a survivor. You wrote that in Turtle.
Yes, I think he was. And I like survivors, but I'm not 100% sure that in my case there weren't many other things at play.
For example?
Well, I was, for example, in good health. And I wasn't, at the time McCarthy period came, I wasn't that old. I wasn't that young, but I wasn't that old. If it had come now, I'd be in hideous trouble. And I wouldn't survive.
Best years should have been
most probably.
at the time that you discovered you were drinking too much. You've also written of what you call the celibate years, so that what you said, the years that are good for many women were not good for me. I didn't know that I wanted anybody, didn't even think about it much, but there suddenly was the wrong man, of course, as could be expected, as usual. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, they were the post-McCarthy years.
And you were living with Hammett?
No, we weren't technically living together. Hammett was living in a cottage in Katona, and we'd had to give up the farm. I was living in New York. We saw each other 2 and 3 times a week, but he didn't want to live in New York, and I didn't want to live in Katona in a small, tiny cottage. And I don't know, I made some kind of superstitious bargain that Hammett was getting ill and we were getting to have less and less money, and I made some kind of idiot bargain that I would lead a very pure life if we were allowed to survive and had enough to eat and got through them. Doesn't sound like a grown woman, does it? And it wasn't a grown woman either.
It sounds extraordinary.
Sounds pretty silly.
No, it sounds extraordinary. And you did survive, and you did have enough to eat.
Yes, but I don't think we did it out of my purity.
It was very
As
hard
if
for you to
anybody
leave that
cared.
farm, and yet in the story you tell about it, it was harder for Hammett.
In many ways, I think it was. In many ways, I think it was.
Tell me the story of the day you saw the deer.
Well, that's a hard story to tell because it's so sort of weird and crazy. It was about, this was a giant place, you know, with all kinds of machinery and boats and 3 boats and farm equipment and animals, and all of it had been sold, and moving vans had been in and out, and people had been there to collect what they bought. And there were deer on the property. There always had been deer on the property. And once, about 10 years before, we had seen a deer in the rock garden, which was immediately outside the house. But we'd never seen another deer close to the house. They were always in the woods, way in the woods. And you had to hunt for a long, long time before you found them. About 3 days before we moved, I had a workroom with a long window along one wall. And I came down the steps carrying something, and Hammett put up his finger to his mouth and said silently, "Come here and bend over. Don't be seen in the window." So I came to the window all bent over and then slowly straightened up. And there on the lawn were about 10 or 12 deer, the lawn right outside the room. Not right outside the room, maybe 25 feet away. And coming up the lake path into the lawn were about 25 more deer, large and small and medium. And as they came up, the first deer would move up to the rock garden and begin biting at bushes, nibbling on things. And we both stood there absolutely transfixed from about 4 on an April afternoon till it got dark. And we must have seen at least, they kept coming and coming and coming. We must have seen at least 100, 125 deer. And they would come and go nibbling at trees and get tired of that and go down and disappear. And then some others would appear after 15 and 20 minutes. It was the most mysterious thing I've ever known, because it couldn't have been that they believed the place was empty. The place had been full of noise, full of cars and trucks and trucking of machinery and pulling of animals. And in the morning of that day, it was the most mysterious and beautiful thing I've ever seen in my whole life. And neither one of us moved for fear of scaring them. Till it got dark, which was perhaps 6:30, 6:45. And I don't know where they were then. We couldn't see out anymore. I don't know whether there was none there the next morning, and none to be seen thereafter. It was as if a farewell party was being given.
I was
Certainly a
thinking
great farewell gift was given.
I was thinking that it was like a pageant.
Which you're being very nice to me. You see, I had to let go of the farm.
You did have to let
The
go.
House Un-American Committee had called me, and I saw the handwriting on the wall. There was no way out. I knew my income would drop.
And you sold it
Nothing.
before you testified?
I sold it 1 month before I testified.
And you had the possibility of selling it to someone who would subdivide it and build a lot of houses, and you
Yeah.
decided not to.
Well, I didn't decide not to. I suppose one of the things that both makes me rather proud and very angry with Hammett is that the man who was going to do that guaranteed me half of his profits and guaranteed me that nothing would be sold in less than 10 acres, which is not bad subdividing. And when I told Hammett, the man was my lawyer, and when I told Hammett that's what I was going to do, he said, that's what we were going to do. He said, no, 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 let everybody else spoil land. Let's you and I leave it alone. Let somebody else do it. I don't want to spoil this land.
So you sold it to someone for how much money?
Oh, I sold it for $67,000, so nothing. I sold it for nothing.
130
No.
acres for 60.
140 acres.
140 acres for $67,000.
Yeah.
Did those people sell it and subdivide it?
They subdivided part of it. It's now it's only, oddly enough, been recently subdivided. I had a call from a real estate agent about 2 months ago saying it was now being really subdivided.
Do you have any idea what that land
About
is worth?
$25,000 an acre now, $30,000 an acre.
One of the things that I think women forget is that there's a price to be paid for the extraordinary freedom that a woman like you has. Do you feel you've paid a price?
Yes, I paid a price.
What price?
Well, I think I said it earlier that there would have been safer, pleasanter ways to go. And as you get older, of course, perhaps you think, I don't think much about them, really. Things turned out the way they did. Some prices, but I have no regrets for that price. Prices are to be paid for everything. There's no way to live without paying a price, and the prices, it'd be very hard for me to regret my life. It's turned out I was very lucky.
I think people who do well and work hard often say they're lucky, but it's a little more than luck.
Oh yes, it's a great deal more than luck. I don't mean to underplay it. I worked very hard, and I don't mean to say it's lucky in the sense of throwing dice.
Was not having children a price you paid?
Yes, it was certainly one of them. I myself should have said it. I hesitate always to say it because it sounds, I don't know, I back away from saying it. Yes, of course it was the price I paid. However, I could have had the children.
Yes.
Hammett wanted them, as indeed you know I was married once, and my husband wanted them. It was my choice.
I didn't know that Hammett wanted them.
Yes, he wanted them too.
That must have been very difficult not to at a
Well, he
time
wanted
that you
them because
loved
I
him.
was pregnant. No, I'm very fond of children. I would have had a nice time with children. That I certainly regret. But now they'd probably be, they certainly would be, if they would be probably grown up and unpleasant.
You like them when they're children. But that comes as a surprise to me, and that Hammett seemed, the way you describe him, as sometimes given to great silences, sometimes moody. One has some difficulty thinking of him as a father, although probably a
No,
great
he has
one.
2 children.
Ah,
He has 2 daughters.
and was he close with them?
Well, he left their mother when they were both, when one was 9 and one was 3. so he wasn't that close to them, but he certainly was close to them and devoted to them, liked them very much, particularly one of them. No, he was very fond of children.
Yes, you tell a wonderful story of his new bow and arrow and
Yes.
taking a child out into the woods.
Yeah.
Was that near the end of the time that you were on the farm?
Yes. Within about 2 years, the child is now a rather well-known botanist, teaches University of New Mexico.
What did he say then? Things should go to the people who want them most?
I said, to sum it up, not to bore you, Westchester County had just passed a quite good law saying you couldn't shoot deer any longer with a shotgun or rifle. You could shoot them with bow and arrow, which of course meant nobody could shoot them because nobody knew how to shoot a bow and arrow. But Hammett went down and bought a very expensive bow and arrow and taught himself to shoot with bow and arrow. Bought me one too and tried very hard to teach me, but I never could learn.
Yes, you once shot a tree behind you or
I
something.
shot a tree behind me. And he did actually bring in 2 or 3 deer with bow and arrow, which is extraordinary because it's a very hard thing to do. He was in love with this bow and arrow. It cost an absolute fortune. It was very delicately done, specially made. And the child belonged to a quite well-known writer of the time called Hamilton Basso. Does that name mean anything to you? A quite good novelist. And they came to visit us one Sunday, and the boy was fascinated with Hammett's bow and arrow. He took him out to show him how it worked. And as they left, they all got in the car, and Hammett said, go around and talk to them for a minute, hold them for a minute. And I didn't know what he was doing, so I went around and talked to them for a minute, and I saw Hammett open the luggage rack and put in his bow and arrow. And I was furious with him as the car drove up. I said, how could you do that? That bow and arrow cost you a fortune. You love the bow and arrow. And he said, the child loves it more. Things belong to people who love them more.
Have you ever found a place in your life that was like the fig tree, where you felt that much at home and that wanted you that much?
No. But I think you have to be a child to do that. I think you have to be a child to find that. You have to live in a fantasy world.
You said it was solid and comfortable, and I had convinced myself that it wanted me and missed me when I was absent. Did you not feel that way about your farm in Pleasantville?
Oh, I loved the farm, but I do think you have to be a child to think that a place misses you and needs you. And I very much like the house I now live in Martha's Vineyard. Very, very much like it. And I miss it, but I don't think I fantasy any longer that it misses me.
You seem to have a way of hearing voices. I happen to have been reading The Lark last night, your adaptation of the play of Joan of Arc. And you speak now of talking to Nursey sometimes. Is Nursey still around? Tell me about Nursey.
Well, Nursey, I'm ashamed to tell anybody this. Well, I wrote it, so might as well. It makes me sound so nutty. All my life, I've divided myself into 2 and sometimes 3 parts. And they talk. They put me in my place, so they have little dialogues. And one part for many years has been called Nursey. And when I get very, very upset, Nursey says things like, now, dear, quiet yourself. Or, why don't you take a nice nap or a hot bath? Or, why don't you go play tennis for a little while and forget things? You're taking everything too seriously. I would put down that scotch and soda if I were you. And I say, please go to your room.
You say to Nursey.
I say to Macy. I said that when I wrote about Nursey recently, that Peter Fiedelman was staying with me in the vineyard during Fundamento, and I was evidently so wildly cutting up that he tells me his room was down the hall, and I always keep my door open because my work room is around an L. That he, about once a week, would think I had a visitor whom I didn't want and would always keep his door closed and never come out for fear of seeing the visitor and getting into some kind of intruding upon us. Well, it wasn't any visit, it was Nursey, because I was having great, great trouble with Fundamento, and I was growing very angry with Nursey.
Do you make the words that Nursey says? In other words, when Fiedelman was down the hall, could he hear both you and Nursey?
No, I don't. Nursey doesn't speak out loud.
Oh,
See,
only
that's
you.
the trouble.
I see.
And Nursey, even I'm not that crazy. It's bad enough I talk out loud to Nursey. And Nursey has been, in the last 10 years, joined by a character called Madam. Madam is even worse than Nursey, because she doesn't often appear,
But she's a recent arrival in
she's
your life.
the last 10 years she's been around.
And what does Madam do?
Madam says things like, "Oh, you two, please don't be so noisy. Oh, you two have been doing this for so many years. Why don't you get used to each other? There are two sides to everybody. Don't you understand that, don't you?" And then I say to very loudly, which is what Peter was hearing, "Both of you had better go to your rooms and stay there. Your life depends upon me, kids. Get the hell out of here," at the top of my voice. And when I told him this, he said, "I think I'm staying with a crazy lady." And I don't blame him.
Is Nursey Sophronia?
No, Sophronia never talked that way. Sophronia was very sharp. Nursey is rather upper-class delicate. She rather teaches at a very good girls' school.
Tell me about Sophronia. What do you remember most about her?
Oh, I remember so much. You'd be here forever.
Well, Sophronia was your nurse from the very beginning.
Yes. And was a very, very, I have a lovely picture of Sophronia. I'm sure you've seen in that book. A very handsome colored woman whom I loved absolutely devotedly all her life. She lived until I was about somewhere in my 30s, I suppose. My father used to say, if we'd been able to afford Sophronia until you were 16 or 18, everything would have been different. We'd have all been happy, and you'd have been a different child. And the worst thing that ever happened to us was we couldn't afford Sophronia anymore. Sophronia was in absolute control. I was desperately in love with her.
Were you an uncontrolled child and an uncontrolled woman?
Fairly uncontrolled, yes. Uncontrollable. I wasn't uncontrolled at all. I was uncontrollable.
Were you looking for limits, and did Hammett provide them?
I don't think I was... I think that's rather too mild a way of putting it. I told you yesterday that after Little Foxes and the very heavy drinking, that I realized something had to be done about me, that I wanted that I was getting totally out of hand for myself. And certainly Hammett couldn't have provided that. That would have been, in the first place, they were his drinking days, and he had no desire to control anybody. He was much too busy himself. No, I don't think Hammett had anything to do with my desire to be controlled. As a matter of fact, I think he rather frowned on it.
Talk in your new notes to
At first.
the new edition of your books about aging, about anger giving way to age. Do you think often about aging? You've said you never were tired, or you never knew what the word tired was. You get tired now?
Oh, yes, what I think I said was I never knew what it was up to about 7, 8 years ago. I sure know what it is now. Yeah, sorry.
But you try again tomorrow.
Well, I try not to be tired, but I'm afraid it's not up to me any longer.
You've written that emotions are not recoverable and that years blank out even the passions. In a way, do you think passion is like pain? If you've had a very bad pain, you can never relive it. Do you think the price we pay for that is we can't relive the passions either?
I don't think anything in the world goes faster than, say, sexual passion. Any memory goes faster, but that may just be me.
If there were one...
I mean, if it's just that and nothing else.
If there were one passion that you could relive, either a political passion or an emotional one, do you think you could choose one?
No. No, because I don't think it comes in ones. I think it comes in a whole mesh, in a whole great football of mesh nets and hooks and eyes and scissors and...
It's the fabric of existence.
Yes, it's so much. It's not one event. One thinks of adventure that way. You know, I can think of adventures I'd like to have again. Adventures in the sense of places, as a rule, or moments of enormous pleasure in seeing something or listening to somebody. That I can relive, but no, I couldn't do that. No. Could you?
There's some I'd like to.
Oh, yes, like is one thing.
In our next and final profile with Lillian Hellman, she talks about many of the values gained in her rich and productive life.
Profile was made possible by grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Texas Committee for the Humanities.